All right. Um, Good morning, everyone, um, to the Chamber Economic Development and Planning Committee. Uh, we have normally we have a speaker on a particular subject of interest to the committee and to the chamber and to the city and to our surrounding towns. But today we're going to have an open discussion. And what the subject is today is workforce development. We're we're, we're open to ideas, to a general discussion. We have about an hour, and with that, um, I'd like to talk about a little bit of history, and that we did have, as part of the economic development function a few years ago, workforce development, and Mary Saris was part of that group. We then separated that to have workforce development in their own group, and now it's coming back again. Uh, so you know what they say, everything new was once old. So that's what we're doing. Anyways, that's the history. We had some good support from Mary and from people at Salem State and a bunch of other organizations around. But economic development and workforce development really work very hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. So, with that, we'd like to open the discussion, and I'm going to kick it back to Colin to say a few words to open it up.
Sure. We're going to do Mouseketeer roll call in a second, but Colin Codner from the Chamber of Commerce. One of the biggest casualties, and maybe that's an inappropriate term to use, so I apologize if it is, of the COVID era was workforce development conversation. Economic development and was a prevalent conversation. Where are we going? How are we supporting businesses? How can we create? How can we pivot? How can we adjust? How can we make them adapt and move forward? Was a very prevalent conversation. A lot of funding towards keeping businesses engaged and shifting direction. And the entire conversation around workforce development, which was one of the most widely held conversations 3 years ago, disappeared. It literally stopped. And what I really see this meeting being is relaunching that conversation, especially within the chamber, which is very exciting to me. It's a passion of mine. We did a lot of work around the topic, and I'll talk about a couple of different areas of focus that we had. One is on executive skill development. This really targets the age range of about juniors in high school to about sophomores in a traditional college. So 17 to 20, kind of as an age range, as a target market, not exclusively. But talking with a lot of the businesses, we kind of heard that a skill that they want developed is basic office competence. It's not necessarily something that could be taught in a classroom. It's, okay, how can you function in an office with adults? How do we develop that skill? Because that was one of the hardest skills to overcome that we heard from a lot of HR managers and whatnot, and where a lot of issues stemmed from. It wasn't their ability to update a website or some other technical skill. It was literally sitting in an office and learning how to answer a phone, or just being literally in an office, how to do some of those executive skill functions. The other thing that we heard from a lot of people was the need to shift the conversation around the definition of success. And the definition of success, I mean, for me, I remember my mom looking at me in high school and saying, you have to go to college because that's how you are successful. You can't do anything else because you have to go to college because that's how you are successful. And shifting that conversation to, there's a lot of ways to be successful. Trade work. I mean, the #1 way in America to become a plumber or to become a millionaire is to become a plumber. And then go through that process, become a master plumber, open a small business, and there you go. You're a millionaire. By
Never show up on time.
Yeah, exactly. But those types of conversations is shifting the definition of what success is to a much broader, advanceable career path. So that's kind of where we ended and where we were about 3 years ago. So with that, I'm going to just walk through and just call your name, give you a minute to introduce yourself, who you are, what business you represent, and then what is your interest in workforce development. So I'll start on my left with Jean Marie Minton.
Oh, great. Thanks, Colin. Good to see you. Good to be here. Jean Marie Minton. I'm a realtor for the past 20 years. I'm affiliated with Keller Williams. And I'm newer to Lynn, just moved here, as some folks know, from the city of Chicago. And
good to see you. Good to see you.
And this is of special interest to me because I recently had a conversation about financial literacy with the superintendent of schools, and I think that's important for young people. And those plumbers that become millionaires, most of them become millionaires because they know how to take care of properties and they start building a real estate portfolio. So I love the conversation about the shifting the definition of success.
Selvin Chambers.
Hello, beautiful people. I'm the Executive Director of Family and Children's Service, soon to become LifeScene. And, we provide services that support both youth and families, from parents to teenagers. And what I'm really interested in regards to economic development and workforce employment, we're actually partnering with Katie Crowler over at Mass Hire we're piloting a workforce employment training program that provides high school students ages 15 to 18 an opportunity to go through an 18-week program that really helps them hone their skills, both hard and soft skills, and to start developing a career path, whether it's college, whether it's looking for a job opportunity, or whether that's looking them to go into a trade program. And the program is really structured to really teach them, how to show up for work. The curriculum also includes sexual education, social justice, diversity, including training, all the things that you need when you become a professional or in a field, these skills that will be very helpful as you're in that field. And this 18-week training program is developed to provide them those skill sets. So on Monday, Thursday, and Fridays, they come in-house where they take these workshops and the training. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays are actually assigned to an externship with a community partner and trying to really use those skills that they learned during the program. And we pay the young people, thanks to Mass Hire, about $14 an hour to learn these skill sets. And what's great about this, we're trying to augment what's not taking place in the school, right? And so really having an opportunity out of the school setting to develop these skills. So when the students decide they want to go on to college or a career, they at least have a general foundation of how to show up and how to get a job or access a job. So we're really excited about that and thankful to Mass Hire that we're doing that.
Hey, Selvin, is there a name to that particular program? So
it's the Teen Scene Workforce Employment Training Program.
Awesome. Teen Scene?
Teen Scene, yes.
Got it. Christine Pierce.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I am Christine from Columbia Insurance Agency, born and bred and still live in Lynn. I worked for Columbia Insurance, which was my father's agency, for 41 years this year. And I've just become the chair of the chamber, so looking for all of your support and guidance. And I just wanted to let everyone know that there's a lot going on in Lynn, and we're glad you're all here. And if you have any suggestions or ideas going forward for the chamber, I hope you reach out to Colin or I or anyone in the chamber. So thank you.
Mary Saris.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Saris. I'm with the Mass Higher North Shore Workforce Board. I'm here with Katie Crowder, who's also in attendance at this meeting. So thank you so much, Sullivan, for those very nice words that you said about the program. Katie can provide you with all the details, but we're very fortunate to be in Massachusetts, where the state is putting a lot of support and money into youth efforts. And so that is an example of some of the things we're doing across the whole North Shore to help with this very precious generation of people that we desperately need to move into the workforce. So, I could provide you with tons of data, and I don't want to do that right now. Whenever it's time, I just want to let you know a couple of things real quickly, that when we went into the pandemic, our unemployment rate was 3.1%. And now that we're out the last month, the unemployment rate was 3.8%. So we are basically back to where we were 2 years ago. But it's a little more complicated because now a lot of people have left the workforce, particularly 55 and older. We've seen a lot of people early retire or at least temporarily leave the labor force. And we desperately want to figure out how to get some of them back. But they, I think, felt, you live through a pandemic, it's time to enjoy yourself. So I don't exactly know what's going on in that age group, but the other age group is the 18 to 24-year-olds who've also not come back to the labor force the way they did pre-pandemic. And so we also, this is really Katie's expertise, we're working on that age group as well. And just one final thought, Colin, you're right, going to college is not a way to necessarily define success. But I would also like to say, in this day and age, there's lots of different ways to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And that those plumbers, and I know for a fact the carpenters union, and you become a master carpenter through the union, you immediately simultaneously receive a college degree for the work you did and the learning you did during your various stages of apprenticeship. So if we could just get that whole college, no college thing out of our minds and say we want to be successful, whatever it might be, recognizing that we're just going to learn for the rest of our lives. And anybody who wants to be successful just has to keep learning. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mary. One quick question on your unemployment statistics. People who have left the workforce, they're not included in the pool of,
Right.
Okay.
They're not in the denominator.
Yes.
Yes,
so
they're out.
The pool is now smaller.
It is. And
Yep.
it's smaller. We knew it was going to be smaller because we have an older workforce. So we knew our labor force would be going to be smaller. We just didn't think it would get small so fast.
Yeah.
And just quickly, the other end of the issue is the immigration problem, that immigration is stalled since 2016. We have started conversations with the New American Center in Lynn, with the Lynn Public Schools, all of those groups where we believe there are immigrants that we could move into the labor force somehow, but we need to focus on that as well.
No, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, yes.
Nicole O'Brien.
Good morning. Hi, my name is Nicole O'Brien. Hi, Christine. I am the founder and executive director of Ruth's Way for Women. We assist women in recovery, homeless women, and female veterans. And how we do that is by providing sober housing for women. We also provide recovery and wellness coaching for both women and men, and trainings for women, men, and small organizations about anything that has to do about recovery, trauma, and helping people move forward and get well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica Fabian, did I get it right?
You did. Thank you. So my name is Jessica. This is my first call. I am the new Director of Strategic Programs at Family and Children's Service with Selvin Chambers. So thank you for inviting me to this conversation. And part of my role at Family and Children's Service is to oversee programs. So the Teen Scene Youth Job Program Selvin spoke about is one of the programs that I will be working intimately with to get going. And just, I am a transplant myself. Someone said they were from Chicago. I recently moved from New York City, where I was for 30 years. And so workforce development and economic development was a lot of what I did. I worked with survivors of domestic violence and human trafficking for 15 years and developed a lot of different programs for primarily women, but as young as 17 through usually 25. And we did it throughout New York City. We did it within our shelters, within the agencies. So it is a topic that I am familiar with, not in Lynn specifically. I'm still learning. It's my second month on the job, but I'm excited to be part of this conversation and see how we can collaborate.
Nice. Joe Shinatico. Thank you, Jessica.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Joe Shinatico. I am Vice President, Branch Manager at Salem 5 Bank in Lynn. I manage the 2 offices that we have in Lynn, and I'm also past chairperson for the Greater Lynn Chamber of Commerce. I'm glad to be here this morning.
And
Joe, you're also on the board of Family and Children's Services.
Yes, correct. That is correct.
and who we've heard so much about already, Katie Crowder. I feel like Kermit from the Muppet Show.
I feel like a superstar. It's amazing. Thanks, everybody. So I'm Katie Crowder. I work with Mary Saris at the Mass Higher North Shore Workforce Board. So I manage all the youth programs. And as Selvin mentioned, one of our biggest programs, from our point of view, we call it YouthWorks. It's a statewide initiative that's funded through state funding. So thank your legislators for fighting for that every year. I think it's increased significantly over the past couple of years, partially in response to the pandemic, partially in response to the increasing minimum wage. So there's a lot of reasons, but we're happy that people are supporting youth statewide. So there's funding out there for youth to work in nonprofits through these programs, but we really want them to essentially start with us and then move on to, a real job, an unsubsidized job, a job that they really have, to take everything that they learn from us and use it so that they can move forward. So as much as we love the state funding, we really want to see them move away from it. So that should be their starting point, and then they can go on to something else. So we're preparing them. So, I think everyone on this call is probably in agreement, but we've been pushing for youth employment for years and years and years. And now it's all of a sudden like, oh, we don't have enough people to work. So maybe we'll ask the teens if they want to do it. So they've been here all along, and we're working to train them on the basic skills, those professional skills to really get them ready for work. But we need help from the community to actually place them in the work, to be those role models and get them going past what we can do.
Thank you. Bill Bachnick.
Hi guys, sorry about that. I'm just trying to keep my video off just as our internet connection is just a little choppy here. I'm Bill Bachnick. I work for the City of Lynn's EDIC office. I'm a project coordinator. Really happy to be on the call today. We work very closely with Mary and Katie. It's great to see you. They're our partners, and we wouldn't be able to do workforce investment and opportunities here within the city without the leadership that they play with not just in Lynn, but the whole region on the North Shore. So we're excited. Again, we're in the midst right now of trying to provide as much small business assistance as possible with the ARPA funding that the city was able to direct to our office. We're in the midst right now. If I have to get off the call, it's to help some of the small businesses that are coming in to pick up their checks, which is great news. So, and we're looking forward to what the future is going to lead relative to workforce and investment within the city. And as has been mentioned on the call so far, there are a number of different pathways to success, and we hope to encourage every resident in the city who would like to participate and develop within workforce investment and job creation over the next, whether it's a year, 5 years, 10 years here in the city of Lynn. So happy to be here, guys.
Thank you. And last but not least, Danielle Bell. So she can't speak right now, but she's Danielle Bell, and she's looking for programs that, wow, she wrote a lot. Thank you, Danielle. She's with Beyond Walls. If you guys all want to take a second and make sure you read up on Danielle, she provided a great bio right there. So one of the goals that we're looking to do, as Glenn had mentioned, there's a lot of collaboration between workforce development and economic development. But at the same regard, a lot of people who are really vested in workforce development don't necessarily care about transportation as much, and vice versa. So one of the things that we're really looking to do is re-engage on workforce development focused initiatives and opportunities. And this is really a call to rebuild a committee that is interested and engaged in these topics and be able to take some initiatives and move them forward within the community. I'm a big believer that finding a goal and then getting partners to achieve that goal is the best path forward, rather than a whole bunch of people trying to do individual things by themselves. So it sounds like we have a pretty good group in the room that are interested in and seem to be very much on board with the same direction. So with that said, I'd like to just kind of go around, just have, as Glenn mentioned, an open discussion and conversation about maybe we can start with what are almost kind of a SWOT kind of mentality. Start with some of the issues that we see that are underserved at this time, kind of just identifying some of them, and then we can move into some opportunities that we see in the environment today. So anyone can jump out there. We're gonna, again, focus right now on just what are some of the issues that we see that are not being, the needs that we are seeing that are not being addressed. Mary, I saw your hand up. So.
Yeah, if you don't mind, and I have to apologize. I have to jump off at 9. I thought this meeting was 8 to 9. And so I scheduled a 9 o'clock meeting.
No problem.
But Katie is staying, so she will be here through the whole meeting. But I think just quickly, I know from my perspective, the things that are happening through YouthWorks, I think really fill a huge gap. And that is bringing the young people to the workforce and the work world to the young people, to making a connection. So they begin to think, know, understand what work is all about, how wonderful work can be, and how important it is to their future. So they can see and have hope for the future in a way that perhaps they don't have now. That gets a little philosophical. I'm sorry to be philosophical.
But Mary, can I, before Mary leaves, so Mary, I think you're right to be philosophical, and please don't apologize for that, because and I have a question for you. Why, you mentioned that the 18 to 24-year-olds did not come back to work. So why is that, do you think? What are, what have you been hearing? What have you observed? Why is that?
We have a lot of theories, because we're looking at why a lot of people aren't coming back to work, not just the young people, but we do know that a couple of things that we've been told because of the pandemic, that people have changed their minds about how they want to spend their lives and what their lifestyles should be like. And I think there's a lot of confusion in the young people's minds about what they want their life to look like. And I think a lot of them are just not informed about what the future can hold for them. And we are working really hard with the schools, with the nonprofit organizations to provide information about the wonderful opportunities that are there and to help them see and understand them. When we meet with youth, when I meet with youth, we go through our critical industries. Our critical industries, manufacturing, healthcare, IT, which is in every single industry, by the way, financial services, all of those industries that we think are the backbone of our economy. And I describe to them, what they are. Here's manufacturing, there's how many jobs are in the area, and these are the types of jobs, blah, blah. And then I go through all the others. And then I ask them, so who would like to work in manufacturing? And no one raises their hand. And then I say, who would like to work in healthcare? And you might have one or two people raise their hand, but not a lot. So when it's over, I look at them all and I say, well, what do you want to do? And they, the last session we had a group of kids who said they want to be in movies. They want acting careers. There was a little core group of kids there who want to do that. So you think, okay, well, it's good to have dreams, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But so there's a real lack of information. And that is why we have our youth efforts. That is why we're doing what we're doing through Katie's department here. Katie, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think exactly what you said. They don't know, so they just say nothing. I think there's an interest in careers that may not be realistic for them, unfortunately, as you said. There's also the interest in like the gig economy and things like being a YouTube star. I'm going to be an influencer. I'm going to be, and there's also this mentality of there's just so much time that I can think about that later. Especially with the pandemic, I think that worsened it. There's always that mentality with high school students, like, yeah, I'll get to that. But now, they've been told, we're on a pause. We're just getting through this. That mindset of you don't have to rush and you don't have to figure it out. We're just kind of getting through each day. And, at the end of the day, they still graduate and they still have to figure out what they're doing next. So while it's true that we're, in a different world right now, they do still have to think about what's next. And they're just not really thinking about that. And they don't have people around them who are doing it either because everyone else has been sort of in turmoil. So there's a lot of reasons. And then they're disconnected from the community services that they were engaged in the past. A lot of people left those, after school programs or even just going to the Y and exercising and things like that and being involved in something. So, for example, trying to place youth at the YMCA in Lynn, we used to just take the youth who were already involved. And this year we actually had to go and recruit the youth to find them and work there because they weren't already involved. So finding them has been more challenging than in the past.
Jessica, you've had your hand up for a while.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Jessica, you have your hand up.
I do. The one thing that I thought of, I agree with Katie. I think one of the things, if the conversation has shifted in the last couple of years, and I think there's a gap of, we do have a lot of youth that have been isolated and disconnected, and I think we don't want to underestimate mental health issues and trauma that our young people have experienced. I think it's significant. I think it's impacting the young people's ability to move forward, to plan. So, right, anyone who has experience working with trauma, right? So what makes sense of how we plan, our young people aren't sort of thinking in that way at this point. I know we just have been interviewing for our program with Mass Hire, and many of the young people who we have interviewed have expressed mental health challenges from the isolation, from being disconnected, social anxieties now of returning to work or to going to work, which is pretty significant. And I think there needs to be a supportive component for them to succeed in a workforce or economic development program.
Thank you, Jessica. Selvin.
Yeah, one of the key components that I think is really important in regards to workforce development for young people is that, really training them to show up, training them to speak up and plan up. And what I mean by that, what's your plan? What's your pathway? When I think about my own pathway, being one of 11 children growing up in a housing development, my opportunity that I thought was an opportunity, I wanted to be a garbage truck driver, believe it or not. And that's because I saw a local gentleman in the neighborhood who was driving a garbage truck. But I saw this job as, okay, that's what I need to be doing, right? I didn't think I was going to be an ED of a nonprofit, 35 years later. And then also, it's really important that we develop a pathway for them to be successful. Some people think college is it, but I went to college with a bunch of students who used college as a 13th grade, and then they got a bill that they got to pay that because they didn't finish school, right? But if a program is really preparing them for a pathway, right, and showing them the opportunities, it might be college, it might be trade school, right? It might mean right after high school, I need to get a job in the here and now. But I think really preparing someone to develop a pathway for self-sustainability is really, really important.
One complement to workforce development is economic development. In order to have those good opportunities, other than it seems a plumber or an electrician, which you just can't get, is creating good jobs. And in order to do that, I think we need to focus in a few areas rather than being too broadly general. So you, Colin, had talked about SWOT. One of the first letter of SWOT is what is our strengths. Second is what is our weaknesses. What industries are our strengths or could be our strengths, the opportunity. So I think as part of the workforce development, we really need to remember that economic development is going to be a big part of that, and to focus. We've talked about the size of the food industry in Lynn. And it's fairly hidden, but it's really quite deep. There are opportunities there. Are there opportunities in advanced manufacturing? Are there opportunities in high tech? Can there be opportunities, especially in the manufacturing part of the biotech industry? Every one of these biotech companies that are growing and getting huge investments need to have facilities, including pilot plants and manufacturing facilities. Do we have an opportunity in Lynn and in the North Shore more broadly to provide those kinds of facilities? And how do we do that? So that's my spiel is, we need to remember the complement to workforce development being economic development.
Yeah, no, thank you. Shifting our mental focus a little bit. We talked about some of the needs out there, some opportunities we've expressed, but I also want to talk about what are some of the barriers that we are going to confront as we, because I think the conversation in this room so far has been very centric around kind of the 18 to 24-year-old workforce. There is a component of workforce development that is the retraining of the 35-year-old or whatnot. So I don't want to discount that in life and the scope of this committee. But our focus really today has been in that 16 to 24-year-old age range. So sitting in that wheelhouse, let's kind of dig into that a little bit and say, what are some of the barriers that we're going to confront in bringing that career pathway concept rather than college as the and when I say college, I just want to be very specific that when I say the word college, I'm talking about grades 13 through 16, traditional 4-year college educational experience straight out of high school. It's just a lot easier to just say college.
As you know, I used to be the chair of the trustees at the Charles River Consortium, which it was a federally funded program which ran school to career programs in the western suburbs, and also had a teachers in industry program in collaboration with Mass High Tech. And the single biggest impediment we found to opening up the minds that there may be other opportunities is parents.
Yeah, that's a good barrier. Any other barriers that we want to just kind of define while we're sitting here that we see that potentially confronting?
I'll speak up. I see this repeatedly. Look, I sit down with people who want to buy homes or say they want to, or I talk to people who still haven't bought a home because they don't see the path. I do think that the lack of financial literacy is a huge problem, because if you're a kid in school, you're typically not paying your bills. Somebody else is paying the bills. And I think, but by the time you're in high school, you're too cool for school. And that's an impediment. I really want us to be focusing on this financial literacy in the schools at a younger age, and let's say middle school, so that children are empowered to understand how grown-ups move through the world. I mean, we move through the world based on what we can create and what we contribute. And that usually that involves money.
Mm-hmm.
And work is to provide money, but it's also a purpose. Work is also a purpose. It gives us purpose through life. That's why I didn't want Mary to, apologize for being philosophical, because work has a big philosophical component. And we don't talk about that enough. So that's one part. And that's the dreaming part. The kids who want to be in the movies, that's a great dream to have. So start, because the skills that you learn when you're in theater directly will impact your world. I spent years as a professional person on stage, so I see that impact. So financial literacy, I think, is a huge impediment, because young people simply do not know how adults move through the world effectively. They don't.
That's a good one, Jean Marie. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
100%. I just want to combine those two thoughts. I think a lot of us might forget that financial literacy is, one, not being taught in schools, but also they're not seeing it at home. They're not feeling it in any way. So, we need to find how we can reach them in that way. I know a lot of schools do different fairs, where you get a job and you get a salary, and you have to go around and try to figure out what bills you can pay and what you can buy. So, you can actually plan. When we have, for example, info sessions, our manufacturing, those jobs are starting, some of them lowest really 18, some of them are starting at $24 an hour without college. We're talking about like a 6-month training program, but a high school student can't perceive or understand, okay, I'm not paying for this training program and I'm going to make this hourly wage, versus I'm going to go to college with no plan, no financial skills, and possibly not the academic skills to be in college, and get loans and then get a job that essentially is in the same pay scale. So they can't really understand that. So when you say you could make $24 an hour, they're like, okay, I don't know what that means. Can I survive on $24 an hour? Is that good? I don't even know how much money I need to pay rent, where am I going to live? They're not thinking in that way. So they need those numbers in front of them on a regular basis of this is how much it costs, especially in Massachusetts, it's so expensive. And having that be a regular conversation. It's not a regular conversation in most homes. I mean, even my parents worked and we had a good upbringing, but we never talked about financial literacy.
Well, that goes back to that parent issue. And I think one of the problems is, which is, we talk about this every generation, is parents are too protective. We don't want to tell our kids about the realities of life. We don't want to tell the kids that, the workplace isn't always a load of fun. And too many of us have accepted jobs, fallen into jobs, falling into careers that we really may not be all that interested in or love. Classic is the numbers of people who go to law school, then get a job in a law office and say, no, I do not like this.
I do want to peg on something Katie said, because I actually jotted a note down and then you came back to it. And I'll preface this by saying I do not know what is done in schools. So this is not an indictment on schools. This is a general concept. Anytime you sit down and talk with a marketing person about selling a product, they're going to tell you the number 25. Someone needs to hear it, see it, live it 25 times before they start to believe it. Katie used the term regular conversation, and that's when I just went, bing, wow. How many times are we looking at youth and whatnot and giving them a presentation, having a guest come in and talk to them and giving them a really good piece of information, and that's it. Are we doing this 25 times? Are we making this financial literacy component, this career pathway conversation, a regular conversation? Or is it a one and done type thing? Yeah, we'll do it 3 or 4 times a year. I mean, it's wonderful, great, but you're still short 20 for it to really actually start sinking in. So I think the regular conversation component can be a barrier, only because it's now competing against what else? Well, we have a math curriculum that we need to get through. We have a social studies curriculum we need to get through. So it's now competing with some of those other educational components to be embedded in the regular conversation. So I think that's something that we can identify as a barrier. Not something that's overcomable, but certainly something that we can identify. Jessica.
As I'm listening to the conversation, and again, I apologize, I'm still relatively new to Massachusetts and Lynn. We did a lot of work in New York, and I think they're a national nonprofit, but there's an organization called Work in Support of Education that works with, I actually just looked because I wasn't certain if it was specific to New York, but part of what I was doing there was really partnering with people doing the work around financial education, right? And for high school students, as well as even like the Financial Planning Association, they do nonprofit work. And so, you can tailor programming. So whether it's, through internships with, say like a mass hire, I mean, there's amazing organizations doing this type of work that are, when we got a small grant to do it, but I can do some research actually to even see if it's something that it says it's global, they're doing a lot of work. And so maybe it's something to introduce or get someone to do a presentation at one of the meetings. But they are working specifically with youth, and we I tailored it for survivors of domestic violence. It was the same curriculum because they get certified as financially literate. It's a national certification program. And so we didn't change the topics, but we made it relevant for the population we were working with. And it was interesting. So it might be something for me to look into and maybe follow up with this group on a couple of those resources.
That would be great. I mean, specifically, I am talking about this with the superintendent of schools because I'm so passionate about it, right? And I see a tremendous opportunity here in Lynn to get this word out in a community where people wouldn't think that children don't have access to this financial literacy component. This is not a wealthy community, so people don't maybe think that this is worthy of the conversation or whatever, right? Whatever. There are preconceived notions about who gets financial literacy, who will benefit from it. And I just see this as a tremendous opportunity for Lynn, especially with its immigrant community, with the number of, with the size of families, with the number of families who are really pulling together to make things happen. So I would be very interested in Jessica in learning more about what you're talking about. And going back to what Colin said about how many times are we having this conversation in front of children? I want us to remember way back when Mr. Rogers was a regular on TV. Like, how many times do my grown daughters who are in their 30s, who came to Mr. Rogers, like, talk about, remember when he went to the crayon factory? Remember when he went to this factory? That sort of thing. And that was tailored for little children. We've missed that boat. We have educated, we have brought children along and not giving them the exposure to the joy in manufacturing. You know, I'll tell you who really understands work. You go to kids who work on a farm, who grew up in a farm life. They know what happens when you don't milk the cows or collect the eggs from the chickens. And that's really fun for children. So I see that also as a real component of this. How can we bring that fun component to work to the children in Lynn, where work really is fun and there's a direct correlation between your action and what you create.
Yeah, you're very right about the farm analogy. My mother grew up in a big farm family up in Benedictine, Maine, and I was the oldest of 6 children, so I got shipped up every summer to work with my grandparents on the farm, even though they had 12 other kids. You're right, the work has to be done, period, and it's every morning, every night, you got to milk those cows. And it does teach you some interesting work skills and some interpersonal skills because you can't do it yourself.
Yeah.
So maybe the answer is we ship everybody to the farm for a summer.
More cows in Lynn.
More cows, yeah.
Well,
but then we have the problem with methane. So, you know, it's.
So Selvin, and then I want to shift gears for the last couple of minutes of the meeting today. Selvin.
One thing that I think is really important, especially with young people, right? You got to put people in front of them that kind of look like them, that have walked that path that they're trying to go on, because with that, they see the opportunity. So I think it's really important to be able to provide that opportunity, because even if it can't be a mentorship, a guest speaker who's be able to tell their career path, and someone in the room says, oh gosh, that's me, right? And it's really important that you do that, because then people say, there's hope, there's an opportunity. So I think that is a key component to any workforce development program.
Selvin, do you really see that as a barrier right now, as there's not enough of that? Or do you see it more of just something that just kind of needs to happen?
Definitely is not enough of that, most definitely.
Okay. No, great, thank you. So for the last couple of minutes, I always like to, yes, Christine.
Thank Colin. I think I'm not blaming it on it, but I feel like a lot of that went away when MCAS came in. Because before MCAS, I know when I was in school, my 3rd grade teacher taught us how to play the recorder. Every kid had a recorder. We did a lot of, origami. We did, and even my kids before MCAS came in, they did a lot of creative stuff. They learned a lot more. my kids, their third grade teacher taught them about a checking account, like banking and saving. And I just feel like a lot of the creative stuff went away. I have friends that are teachers say, I can't do the fun stuff I used to do, which was bringing in people to talk about their jobs and things like that, because we have so much studying to do. They have to pass this test. And I feel like that put a little cramp in it because they used to do all that creative stuff, bringing mentors in and speaking to the classes and learning about banking. And I just feel like the kids nowadays are not getting that. They're just getting ready to take a test. And I
Yeah.
could be wrong.
When I was
I
a
mean,
kid,
it's the whole, I won't put MCAS specifically, but it's the standardized educational
Right.
model. That is, I think what you're identifying. So, like I said, I want to shift gears, and it's always a fun way to end these conversations, is what I like to call dream big. Give me this amazing thing that's going to happen within 3 years. Where are we going to be? What's this thing that we want to let's the super optimistic future outcome?
We're going to have a financial literacy program starting in middle schools within 3 years, and it will then graduate to high school.
I think it can start earlier. When I was a kid, the banks used to have these little books that you could put dimes in and then take them to the bank when you filled it up. That taught financial literacy.
Yeah.
Financial literacy program, 4th through 12. Okay, next. Even bigger than that. How about
Every 10th grader is going to learn CRISPR technology.
what's CRISPR?
Oh, wow. Seriously?
Gene splicing.
Oh,
Actually, it sounds funny, but I do know a bunch of high school sophomores who years ago worked for a summer dissecting these worms, not the worms, earthworms, but these tiny little worms that you really couldn't even see unless you had special glasses on. And that was part of a prep for experiments that were made on those worms.
nice. Another one.
I think the more that we empower the children starting in elementary school, the better decisions they'll make as preteens, teenagers, and young adults, which solves so many problems if we do some preventative work and empower and educate people and provide equity for people, not just equality, but equity, so that we can provide the right resources for each individual person.
When you say equity, are you talking about a particular area, economic equity, technology access equity, or
I think it needs to be person-centered, and that when we teach people, when we give people the individuals, like you're not going to teach someone with autism the same way you do as someone who's mainstreamed. So providing the resources that each maybe school or classroom needs so that we can empower the children to make better choices for their future.
no, thank you for the clarification. Danielle, that's a great one. If you didn't see it, it's office exposure. She said starting in middle school. Love it. Any other super dream big outcomes that we see that we want to get to?
I think on the economic development side, which affects job opportunities, as part of the current economic development, business development plan that's being considered by the city, a rezoning of the area around Alley Street in Lynn to encourage development of more job-centered properties, including pilot plants for biotech, including food-centered businesses, including advanced manufacturing.
No, that's a great one. I'll throw one more out there. That high school success metrics on the state level are changed from college matriculation rates to 25-year-old career pathway metric. It's rather than how many kids do you put into college, is how many kids do you put on a successful career pathway by the time they're 25. Where's that? I think that's a dream big goal, that we can get to that metric versus the other metric, and that's where schools get funding and are measured from a success standpoint.
I have another point that I just want to throw out there, and I don't know, maybe I'm way out of my wheelhouse, but how about if Lynn Vocational had a cable show that was all about how cool it is, like to do plumbing, to be in the trades, just a cable show about the fun in the trades, you know, like Joe the plumber in high school or Jill the plumber in high school.
No, that's a great idea.
And at 25
things that
years,
I've,
we measure the length of the plumber's boat in order to determine their success.
One of the tenets of my executive directorship at the chamber is, when you have a meeting, you end on time. It's 9:30 at this moment, but with all of your permission, I'm going to reach out to you individually or as an email group, that we can take this initial conversation and now start to move it forward. So with that in mind, and it being 9:30, I thank you all so much for your time. I just want to highlight Brotherhood Credit Union for letting us be here. And hopefully future meetings we'll be able to meet in person. And thank you, Glenn Morris, Chair, for us hijacking your economic development and planning meeting today to talk about workforce initiatives. So with that, thank you all and have a great morning.
Bye-bye.
Difference.
They did beautiful people.
Yeah, we.